The wind howled across the empty plains of the frontier, carrying with it the scent of gunpowder, sweat, and secrets too old to remember yet too heavy to ever forget. In the small settlement of Dry Creek, nothing ever stayed quiet for long. The desert sun beat down on the crooked wooden buildings, the saloon's sign creaked in the wind, and every stranger's shadow was watched with suspicion, for in the Wild West a man's silence often meant more than his words. It was here that Sheriff Caleb Hart tried to hold together a town already half swallowed by lawlessness. He was a man scarred by war, hardened by loss, and yet he carried a strange calm that unnerved both outlaws and townsfolk alike. His badge wasn't just metal pinned to his chest, it was a weight that had cost him friends, family, and peace of mind. The story began when a stagecoach rolled into town one late evening, its wheels cracked and its driver pale as a ghost. Inside sat a woman with fire in her eyes and dust in her hair. She said her name was Evelyn Cross, and though she claimed to be just passing through, her presence carried secrets like a storm brewing far away but closing fast. That very night, two riders appeared on the ridge, their silhouettes sharp against the blood-red horizon. Everyone in Dry Creek knew trouble when they saw it. By dawn, the first shots had been fired. Outlaws came looking for Evelyn, demanding she be handed over. No one knew why, but Caleb had seen enough to understand she wasn't running from small danger, she was running from a past that could set the whole town ablaze. The gunfight that followed left bullet holes in the church walls, blood in the dust, and fear thick in the air. Dry Creek, once forgotten by the maps, was suddenly written into legend. Yet legends in the West were never simple. As days turned to nights, Evelyn revealed she was the daughter of a railroad tycoon, a woman who had turned her back on wealth and power after discovering her father's empire was built on blood. The men chasing her weren't just outlaws, they were mercenaries paid to silence her forever. Caleb, torn between duty and survival, knew that standing with her meant declaring war on forces far beyond Dry Creek's borders. But the frontier didn't forgive weakness, and it didn't care for fairness. Each sunrise brought new threats, bounty hunters, hired guns, and ghosts of the past rising from the desert sands. The townsfolk, weary of fighting battles that weren't theirs, began to question why they should risk their lives for a stranger. Yet Evelyn, with her unyielding spirit, inspired something they hadn't felt in years: hope. She worked beside them, mended broken doors, cooked meals for the children, and spoke of a future where Dry Creek could be more than just a pit stop for drifters. Slowly, hearts began to change. When the mercenaries finally returned with a small army, the people of Dry Creek had a choice: run, surrender, or fight. Under Caleb's command and Evelyn's courage, they chose the last. What followed was not just a battle but a stand that turned ordinary farmers, barkeeps, and blacksmiths into defenders of their home. The desert that night roared with gunfire, the air thick with smoke and fear. Caleb faced his own demons as he fought side by side with Evelyn, realizing that the bond forged in blood and fire was stronger than any badge or law. By dawn, the mercenaries lay scattered, the survivors retreating into the wasteland. Dry Creek stood bruised but unbroken. Evelyn, no longer a fugitive but a part of the town's soul, chose to stay, and Caleb found something he thought he had buried long ago: a reason to keep fighting, not just for law, but for life. The weeks that followed were uneasy but alive. Graves were dug, buildings patched, and every scar on the town became a story whispered by firelight. Evelyn spent her mornings helping in the schoolhouse, her afternoons working alongside the ranchers. The people who once looked at her with suspicion now greeted her with nods of respect. Yet the horizon never stayed clear for long. One evening, a telegram arrived at the sheriff's office. It was short, but enough to drain the color from Caleb's face. The railroad company had placed a bounty so large on Evelyn's head that every gunman west of the Mississippi would be tempted to collect it. The town, still healing, braced itself for another storm. Caleb knew he couldn't ask farmers and widows to fight another army. But Evelyn surprised him once more. She stood in the saloon and spoke to them all, "I won't run anymore. They'll come for me, but they'll find I am not alone." Her words, steady and fearless, struck something deep in every heart. Dry Creek had been overlooked, underestimated, forgotten by the world, but now it had something worth protecting, a woman who refused to be broken and a sheriff who refused to surrender. Nights grew restless, and every sound in the desert felt like a warning. Scouts reported riders gathering miles away, campfires glowing like stars on the plains. Caleb sharpened his rifle, Evelyn practiced with a revolver, and the townsfolk built barricades with their bare hands. When the final storm arrived, it came with thunder. Dozens of hired guns rode into Dry Creek, their laughter drowned only by the pounding of hooves. What followed was chaos, gunfire splitting the air, windows shattering, torches igniting rooftops. The town became a battlefield. Caleb was everywhere, his rifle cracking with deadly precision. Evelyn fought too, her aim unshaken, her courage unbreakable. Blood painted the dust, but so did resolve. Hours passed like days until the mercenaries, realizing the town would not bend, finally broke. As the survivors fled into the wilderness, silence fell heavy over Dry Creek. Smoke curled into the dawn sky, bodies lay in the street, and the town, though battered, still stood. Caleb dropped to one knee, exhausted, his badge tarnished but shining in the sun. Evelyn knelt beside him, dirt and blood streaking her face, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to smile. Dry Creek would never be the same. Its people had seen their weakness turned into strength, their fear into fire. They were no longer a forgotten settlement. They were a legend written into the very dust of the West. And somewhere in that dust, beneath the scars and the loss, Caleb and Evelyn found something even rarer than survival, a love born not of convenience, but of defiance, a bond that could withstand the cruelty of the frontier. The wind still howls across the plains, carrying whispers of their stand, and if you listen closely, you can almost hear it. History doesn't whisper here. It growls, and in Dry Creek,